Hello, everybody. This is Sue Frederick, and I want to have a mystical conversation with all of you. And today we're going to have one with the amazing Julie Chimes, a near-death experiencer, the author of an amazing book called Stranger in Paradise. But what is a mystical conversation? Well, it's when we lift above that earthly point of view that can be terrifying, depressing, blame inducing, and really see our journeys from the soul's perspective. And once we do that, we are able to love and forgive and have a productive life, no matter what happens to us. And our speaker, our guest today, is an amazing example of that. She was the daughter of Miss Great Britain and the stepdaughter of a famous British comedian and actor. So her life was always unusual, but never more so than when a stranger came to her British cottage when she was 31 years old and tried to stab her to death. As she was stabbed and attacked violently and repeatedly by her attacker, she lifted from her body and experienced a profound near-death experience that changed the trajectory of her life. Her website is juliechimes.com. And now take it away, Julie. Bring us to that moment that changed your life.
Well, Sue, thank you for such a wonderful synopsis. You make my job easier. So, and greetings to everyone from a beautiful evening here in southern Spain. And the day really that changed my life, well, indeed it did, in that moment. The reason, I think I'd like to just say, the reason that I share these experiences, and I haven't actually done so for quite a long time, because I wrote my book some years ago and I went on a book tour and I met amazing people from around this world and heard all of their questions and fears and doubts, and from that I've been formulating what to talk about now, what's relevant now. And I think that the biggest question I'm ever asked from people grieving the loss of a loved one through acts of violence or sudden death, the shock of that. So I want to talk about that, perhaps on this mystical conversation, and to say that the circumstances that led up to this day that changed my life were very interesting, because there were a lot of signs along the way. And if you're interested in that sort of thing, the book goes into quite some detail. What I can tell you is that this event had to happen to me. And so I'll try and just give a little synopsis for your listeners and viewers. I'd just come back off a short holiday with my mum and my stepfather in Spain, because I knew that although I had a successful life and I had, a fabulous job, I was a director of several companies, I had a lot of money, I had property, a great circle of friends, a boyfriend who was a family friend, something was deeply missing in my life, but I didn't know what it was. And I felt that I was still hungry for something, and I felt an emptiness inside me. So this trip away had been to have a little refocus about what I was going to do with this next part of my life. And I being in Spain, it made me long to get away from the rain and wet and cold of England and go into a warmer climate where it seemed to have beautiful color 24/7. And you guys know all about that, and flowers and abundance, nature and big skies and mountains. And I was sort of captivated, but I somehow couldn't see a bridge from the world I was in into this sort of world of another country. So coming back here to England, it was sort of grey and it was raining and it was cold. And I went to my cottage home. I got there in the evening. I saw my partner. He was a doctor, and he was a senior partner of a busy practice with about 7,500 patients. And in those days, it was quite normal for doctors would be on call. They take it in turns on a rota to pick up emergencies. So all the police, ambulance drivers, everybody kind of knew if they phoned the surgery, they'd get a phone number to give, in case of emergency, this is the doctor you need to talk to today, and he'll get straight back to you. Well, the morning, in the early hours of the morning, we did receive a call from police, and these police said that they'd taken a woman off a train that was heading to London. Our cottage was about an hour to the south of London, in a sort of in the countryside, and this woman had been taken off the train, and I could hear sort of one side of the conversation from the police. They didn't know this person's name. They didn't know quite what to do with her. She was not very forthcoming in giving them any information. And so, and my partner said, well, look, I'm really busy. So this morning's fully booked, but bring her down to my practice later when I can give them my full attention. Because also he thought, in those days, if you needed to section somebody, if they were a danger to themselves, you needed their family, you needed their psychiatrist, you needed quite a lot of protocols in place. And so he wasn't sure what state this person was in. But in effect, what happened is he went into work quite early in the morning, and the police were already there sitting in the car park. They didn't want to keep this woman, and so they kind of sort of dumped her out of the car and said, there you go, your problem now, bye-bye. And off they went. And so, of course, he was so busy, and he could only give her a very, very brief moment in time of his attention. And then he had to sort of make a decision. He said, look, I'm going to make a phone call. And he phoned me. Now, ironically, I had come back from England. My mother had begged me to stay longer. And I'd come back saying, I've got meetings, I'm really busy, I've got things I have to do. I'd love to stay, but I can't. Now, very relevant, because on this morning, I got a phone call from my partner, and he said, oh, I've got this distressed woman. I do actually know who she is. And she's really up, could you take care of her just for an hour or so whilst I get a space to come and deal with her? And she just needs, to be warm and safe. And I said, of course, yes. And so she was driven to our home, which was just like a few minutes away. And there I found, I was answering the door to a woman who I had met once very briefly at a social gathering. And I invited her in. I did all of the things that one does to make somebody comfortable and to feel at ease. But she clearly was very cold, tired. She was very lucid. She said she hadn't slept, that she was shivering, that she got a lot of things on her mind, and that she hadn't slept for days, and that she was really didn't know what to do with her life. And I thought, well, join the club, So I said, I'll make you a drink. And she said, I don't want to drink, I just want water. I'm really so I got a glass of water, but I still got things ready to make coffee and then I went and I just sat and I took her hands and I looked in her eyes and I said to her, look, I said, I know it can feel so terrible to be lost and alone. What we could do is got a spare room just literally up the stairs, and you could stay there and I could, you could be warm, you could sleep. I don't care if you're here all day, you can rest and relax. There's no stress. And then the doctor can come and see you and he can take it from there. And she said, I would love that. I would love that. And she was so sort of relieved, I think, in that moment. And then I said, look, I'm just going to go upstairs. I've got to get a couple of things ready. I also wanted to phone the surgery to see how long Tony was going to be. And so I kind of ran up, and on the first floor was this little guest bedroom area, and on the top floor was my office. So I ran up to the top floor and I rang every line into the surgery, and of course everyone was engaged and I couldn't get through. And so I came back down the stairs, and I thought the room looked so sweet, little cottage room. I thought, she'll be safe there. And as I came running down the stairs, I was greeted by a blood-curdling scream, and I heard the cutlery drawer go. Back at the back of my consciousness, I heard this rattle, and I thought, good, she's making herself at home. I'd said, make yourself a drink if you want, and but she wasn't. She'd actually helped herself to a very large carving knife, and she ran up the stairs to greet me, and screaming that I had to die in the name of saving the world. And the next thing I know is, I had a 14-inch carving knife plunged into my middle, and well, it wasn't what I was expecting, that was for sure. And you can never be prepared for anything like that. And there's no amount of writing or things I've ever read that come close to what I actually experienced, which is why I felt it was an interesting perspective. Here I am the subject of somebody's wanting to murder me. They really have an absolute 100% focus and intent on doing that. And they've flipped into some alter ego personality that is so different from that crying, shivering little woman that her family probably recognized, into this sort of screaming harridan with a male voice, of really determined to kill me. So I wrote about this because what happened is not what you would think. I mean, normally it's the police, your friends, your family, and every, Tom, Dick, and Harry, we say, comes along and puts in their pennyworth of what they think happened. And I thought no one would ever know. So here it is. What happened? Well, yes, I felt excruciating pain for a moment. That is absolutely, it cannot be put into words, the feeling of something that violent and relentless, repetitive violence. But I shot out of this body. I say I didn't even know what this I was, but some energy, some force just ricocheted and rocketed me out into heavens and galaxies and stars and moons and suns, as if I was a rocket. And just, this was all, I could feel it passing me like a G-force on me of such immense proportions. I just thought I was exploding into millions and millions and millions of pieces. They say we're stardust. I think we are on some level. And that stardust was just reveling in its freedom and like, well, I got him out of there, and I felt this immense love and light envelop me within this exit. And I wasn't heading towards a tunnel or light or relatives. That was not my experience, but I was absolutely enfolded and cocooned in this softness and this light and this love, and there was no pain whatsoever in this place that I was in, this part of me. And I was thinking, well, this is it. I'm dead. I'm dead. And then I was thinking, well, if I am dead, who is this saying I am dead? Because obviously I'm not dead. I'm very much alive and very much aware. And within that moment, then I heard a voice speak to me. And I can't always say these things in absolute sequence. In the book, I tried to put a sequence to it, but things were happening in split seconds. But it felt like I had, as if I were away for months, but I know it was only minutes. And in those months of being on the other side of the door marked death, many things happened to me. So the voice that started to talk out of the light said, "You're safe, beloved. I am with you, but you have to go back." And then I remember I was thinking, I'm not going back. I'm not going back into that. I'm not stupid. I know what's happening down there. No way am I going back. So I was actually sort of arguing with this cosmic voice instead of just sort of going with it and saying, I really couldn't face going back. And he said, "You must. It's not, the thing you hear in many people's experiences. It's not your time." And I then found myself back in my body, just looking out through my eyes at this woman attacking me, and the velvet, the textures and the colors and the music that were still all with me, even though I'd sort of come back into my body. I looked out through my human eyes into the eyes of this person, and I don't know why it came out of my mouth, but it did, which is not what you'd expect. I just said, "You cannot kill me because I love you. I love you. You cannot kill me." think of your family, think of your children. You don't need to do this. You cannot kill me. And then I was back out of my body again, and I visited a huge gallery. I mean, fast. I've said this before, and people probably have heard it, but for your listeners, it was, if you like Harry Potter, you know, this in the hall of Hogwarts, all the paintings are alive. And when I saw that, that is so cool, because that is very close to my experience of being in this extraordinary gallery, except it was full of light, with huge frames and then little tiny frames. And whatever I looked at, I realized this gallery was the gallery of my lifetimes, not just my life, but lifetimes. And so I saw the moments that I was ashamed of, the moments that I'd actually been kind and given love. I not only could I see what was going on in these frames, I could actually feel it. And so lesson number one that I remember so vividly was being told that whatever we do on this earth has a consequence, not to be judged, because we do things that we're ashamed of and that we wish we hadn't done, only out of ignorance, sometimes very deep ignorance, sometimes just a slight ignorance, but we create harmful waves on this beautiful planet of ours through ignorance. And we then have to feel it. When we are on the other side, we actually have to feel what that felt like for the other people or person. And that's pain. That's an extraordinary pain. And then something breaks open inside you, that like just scream with, like, just if only I could have known love, you know, to have given love instead of that horrible reaction or response, or be ignoring somebody or blocking, you know, the stupid things we do as humans because we forget who we are. So this journey was showing me who I am, what I am, how I am so much more. And I am not my body. I am not this body. This body is merely a vehicle that I drive around in. And at the time of this incident, this car that I drive around in was being sledgehammered, and so to speak, and it was not looking so good. And so I was taken into one of these paintings, and I was on a hillside, and I was in the south of France, I believe, and in the mountainside, and I saw this whole genocide had taken place of this beautifully enlightened people. I didn't really know anything about them in this experience. I just knew there are always sort of groups. I was going to say cults, but it's a bad word because it has too many negative connotations. But there are groups of people who carry the light of God within them and carry the truth of the teachings of how to access this light. And they're nearly always destroyed in some way or another upon this planet. And so I was amongst these beautiful people who were being massacred, and it seemed that I was part of that group. And I was crying out to, I suppose, to God, you know, how many more times have I got to die for you? I want to live for you. And that really impacted me, like within the experience. I thought, yes, I haven't lived. That's the thing that's been missing. I've been doing my duty for my country, for my culture, for my family, for the expectations of society, but I haven't lived at all. I haven't listened to that inner part of me that wanted to be a very different kind of person to the person I was becoming. I thought, no wonder you feel so lost and sad and confused. Now, I also had tremendous amount of feelings about, you know, not telling people on earth and the people around me how much I love them, not giving enough quality time and truth, and I felt the neglect of that. I neglected the important things for what? For all the things you can't actually take with you over this transition. you know, the only currency that you have when you leave your body is the love you've given, the kindness you've given, the time you've given, the honest working with yourself and with others to be the best version of you can be. And that doesn't mean to be some superstar, or it just means to be the best wherever you are, in whatever world you are in, whatever religion, culture, country you have come from. Just be the kindest, most beautiful, shining person you can be. And it's not easy to be that. So when I thought about my mum in this out of body state and thought about what my mum was going to be told had been found in the cottage, it just instantly brought me back into my body, and there I was back again. And one of the things I'd been shown was a martial arts lesson, and how to on the other side of this lovely monk was looking at me, whatever I was. He could see something, surely, and I could certainly see him. We had these two gorgeous little boys, and they were running at each other, and they were all full of energy and fighting, and he was sort of laughing and saying, no, 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 that's not the way you do it. And then he was showing them, you stand still, you run at him and go to hit him. And the little boys did this, and then the monk was standing behind the boy who was standing still, and he just deflected the energy of the one running, and of course he fell over. And then he looked straight at me and he said, it's so simple, so simple. You simply use the attacker's energy and strength against them. And in that moment then, of being back on the stairs, this knife was coming at me, and I just did that, and my God, this person just went and sort of fell forward on their face and embedded the knife into the staircase, which enabled me to get off this slide sort of through and get down into my kitchen, which this staircase opened out into. All the way through the house I was guided, and I call this Voice Veritas, because I did that sometime after the event, because it seemed that everything I was told was a truth. And so it felt a good name, a collective name for all of the experience. The Veritas was not a person as such, but a collective consciousness that was sort of beaming itself into me to say, you're all right, you're safe, this is okay. And one thing I wanted to impart, if I can, and I know it's so difficult when you're grieving. I've been through tremendous grief in my life. I know what it's like, and it's like a tsunami that comes over you of hopelessness and helplessness. But I can tell you that from the perspective of the one that, you know, might have been the cause of terrible grief, I actually was experiencing something beautiful. And I feel very much that every soul that transitions this earth, and no matter how they leave, whether it's, you know, peacefully in their sleep, God willing for us, or whether it's through an act of trauma, they are met with such love. The arms that are around them, that are holding them, that are guiding them, that are leading them, are just all there. And it's like at the blink of an eye, this life. And not to offend relatives and who are still grieving, but I think love of when you merge back into that light and love and go to the different levels and locus and astral planes, or where your soul is taken, you know, you can hardly remember the life. And I was shown people that I know who transitioned, and I was given very strict instructions about how to speak to them, and certain things about their earthly life not to mention, because that would not be good for them in the next part of their journey. So I feel like I have to live to be able to say this. I have to live to be able to tell people, you do not die. And if you can go through your grief, because your grief is for you, but do not grieve for the ones that have gone, because they're all right. They're so all right, and so filled with, they have everything that they could possibly need. And you know that your tears keep them actually from communicating with you. That's what they told me. Your tears and your fears and your anger, that makes like a barrier, which is very hard for the subtle energy of the spirit realms to actually reach you. So as hard as it is, wipe away the tears, open the heart, know that they are always there. They'll come, they'll come in your dreams. They come in your dreams and they'll speak to you. They'll tell you, I'm sure
Yes.
your viewers and your listeners, and I know that the veil is just really, it's so thin. It's so thin. And there's so much I don't know. I've done my very best to go on a journey and a pursuit of trying to back engineer all of this knowledge I was given, because I really didn't know quite what to do with it all. And it was making me almost frightened of this, suddenly seeing people and looking straight into their eyes, and seeing their tear, feeling I was crying all the time. I was laughing, horrified sometimes at what I could see and think. So I went on this journey, and this is again another very important thing to say. I know for me, I went into a state of enlightenment. I think that would be the way to describe it, where I was in the bliss of freedom and just dancing in this universe somewhere amongst the stars. But in my humanness, when I came back into my life, the brutal reality of the injuries, the loss of my work, a loss of, my life did change. I did get my wish, but not quite, as I said at the beginning of this, not quite how I expected. And um, I remember losing Veritas, because Veritas was still speaking to me in dreams, and I could actually hear his voice deep within my own ears. And I could hear music. I could still hear music and messages, and I could sit and I could meditate, and I could access the experience again without the pain. I tell you, meditation's a much better path than the one I had. Because
Julie, how many times were you stabbed? I think the listeners need to know how serious that was.
I think, but well, it was, I had 32 stab wounds, and I think of those, I think I was 4 were like really, like should have killed me, very serious injuries, and I lost all of my circulating blood, and I was pronounced dead, and that was in itself quite a journey getting me to the hospital. But I had like an army of angels sort of singing to me on the way. I was having a great time, really. And, so
And
who
can
would
you
have known
talk
that?
about if you feel that you were meant to live? Because I know there were certain things that happened that meant you would survive this horrible attack. Do you want to talk about that for a moment?
Well, of course, my mind was going crazy after the event, trying to piece it all together. And I'd alluded to the fact my mum gave a very big warning that she felt something was wrong, and she'd put she had a gold crucifix, and she put it round my neck, and begged me when I left to Malaga airport to fly back to London. She begged me to keep wearing it. Well, number one, that crucifix flew out of my sweater at one point during the struggle for life, and because I was being attacked in the name of Jesus, and the person attacking me was very taken aback to see this big gold cross fly out of my thing, and so that gave me a crucial moment to get to another point of getting out of this cottage that I was trapped in. Another thing was that some weeks before, I'd been in London on a business meeting. It had been delayed. It was peeing with rain, and I didn't want to go back all the way to my office. So I remembered there was a beautiful old listed building in the heart of London, which had been a headquarters of the Spiritist Association of Great Britain. And it was quite a famous place. And my mum had taken me there when I was a really little kid. And I remembered it had this, to me, a vast library. I thought, I'll go there and I'll read a book until the rain stops, and I can go back to my meeting. And I walked in, and I'm just making this very short. The receptionist was utterly convinced that I'd got an appointment, that I was frightened. I didn't want to admit I got an appointment. And she virtually pushed me down a corridor to go to see a medium. And I was saying again, I just kind of couldn't say no to people in those days. And I just paid my money and in I went, you know, and and this guy sort of looked at me and he said, and we've got this Scottish accent, he spoke like this. And he said, well, why are you here and what is it that you need? And I was thinking, oh, I don't know. I don't even know why I'm here. And then he just went into a, like he'd got the most beautiful blue eyes, and he'd look straight at me, and then he started to sort of tell me things, and they were things no one could have known. And then he said, I only have one thing to tell you. You have to change your front door. You must change your front door. And he was sort of banging his fist. And I was thinking, I've just paid all this money for a DIY instruction from Spirit. But I had actually got a different door that was meant to go on the cottage, because the door that we had was an old door and it opened inwards into a very tiny hallway. And if you open the door, you could only let one person in, and then you had to close the door, get around it, and then go out. It was very awkward. So I did go back and I did change the door. That guy told me some incredible things, actually. Looking, you know, but only with hindsight you can look back at those times and think, my goodness. So when I was in intensive care, I was there for a wee while, as you can imagine. I remember lying there thinking, why didn't he tell me not to let anyone in the house? Why couldn't, so I must have had to go through this, and I must have had to survive the cross, the door, various other things that happened. I was meant to get out. And then the person that saved me, that was just the most extraordinary synchronicity of a young guy who he saved my life. And he was on his way to go and have an early lunch. He was a builder, and he realized he'd lost his wallet, and he turned around to go back, and then he heard a scream, which was my scream. And then he ran and found me sort of in the roadway, you know, still being attacked. And he just disarmed this woman with such calm. And, you know, he never wanted to be named, and he never wanted to be like we wanted as a family to give him something, to do something. He didn't want it. And the police told me that only a few weeks before, he'd rescued some children from a burning building. And so one of the, in the music that I'm currently working on to put to the story, we have a song, and it's called, you know, Not All Angels Have Wings.
Yes.
and it's really for him. It's for him, because, and I'm sure, you know, everyone can relate to that. You know, people turn up sometimes and in the most unexpected moments, and they just do everything that needs to be done to facilitate the next stage. So yes, it's a good question. I definitely was meant to live. I was definitely made a promise in my soul that I would write about the experiences, and I would, if invited, talk about them. And I've done my very best over these years to do that. And when I first wrote about this, you know, there were no internet sites. There was nothing. And I really went on some hard-hitting shows of people who wanted to prove I was some sort of lunatic,
Right.
and, you know, which was probably quite hard for my family as well. But one thing that's very important to talk about is the effect. Look, I didn't die, but I'm telling you, the aftermath of this, particularly on my mother, was so intense. You said in your lovely introduction, you know, Jennifer, my mum was one of the most beautiful women in the world. She could not reconcile that someone had stabbed me in my face and my neck and you know, and that I was quite disfigured for some time, and that someone would do that to her daughter. It broke her heart. And I say, you know, I didn't get killed, but I think my mum did. I think she never was able to resolve it, because within herself, the anger, the tears, her break in her faith with God. And even though I would sit her down and I would tell her of these wonderful things, she said, I know you're telling me the truth. I know it. I've been there. I've experienced it, but I still cannot let this go. And it made me so sad. that she was grieving, and I didn't want her to grieve. I didn't want her to grieve. I wanted her to actually let it go and and love the fact that I was still there in her life. It was almost as if she was acting as if I had gone. It was a very strange thing, and so when I speak to grieving parents and you know, people who've lost their loved ones, and I feel such immense compassion. I know what that feeling is, but I also say try to love them as if they're still here, whether they're in form or not, because they are still here. You know, our souls are tied together, and we're in this mesh and matrix that's so incredible and complex and subtle. Never doubt that if you've had love with somebody, how could that ever not exist? And the other thing is to say, you know, you would think that I should have died. I mean, I should have died a few times over, and it was not my time. And it was made very clear to me that it was not my time. And it was made clear that we have get out clauses in life. We do. And we must always forgive people if they take an early exit, because life's damn tough. You know, it's complicated. And, you know, we lose our way, we lose the light. And I feel sometimes, you know, I think I had a get out clause. I was sort of told, look, if you really, really, really want to stay, we can do it. You can, it's your choice. But your soul knows that you signed up for a lot more than to exit now. So, but sometimes it's just such a joy to leave, you know. I think, but for me, I needed to stay, and there were things that I've needed to do. And
I
so,
think that message is so important for grieving people to know that they're departed. If it really was meant to be their time to cross, there was nothing those moms could have done to prevent their child from crossing, because each soul has their own soul plan, their own exit points, right?
oh God, that
Go ahead.
yes, I'm sorry. I've just felt to say, you must never, ever, ever be angry with yourself that you could have done something or it should have been different. That's such a great point. So, you know, we can't. It's like King Canute, the story of trying to, you know, send the sea back. If the wave's going to fall and crash onto the cliffs, it's got to do that. Nothing, no power on this earth can stop it, and we're fools to think we can. You know, in the big sense of what's going on in the world and in our own personal lives, there is a plan, there is design. And the other thing is, if you know, if we didn't have the dark and the tears and the shadows, we'd never find out what we were made of. You see, I would never have known that I could stand and face somebody with such fulminating hatred coming towards me. But there was no part of me that wanted to harm her. Just not one shred of me could harm her. But neither could I lie there like some little victim. I felt strong and centered and powerful, and could deflect this energy. And so this is one of the great teachings that you know, you're equal to whatever comes at you. And these waves of anger, these waves of grief, I promise you, they get further apart and not as intense. But when they're really rocking your life and smashing you on the rocks, you need all the help you can get from your loved ones, your friends, your society, whatever you can do to try and anchor you down, hold you steady. You know, there's a great teaching where a sage asked his student, it's snowing, it's freezing cold, you look outside the window and there is somebody really suffering, and they're burdened, they're carrying, and they've got, you can see that they're frozen cold. Do you invite them in? What do you do? What are you going to do? And all of his students said, well, yes, you go and you get them and you invite them in. And he went, no, you don't. You put a coat on, you go out there, you link your arm in theirs and you walk with them and you tell them you're nearly there. Come on, we'll do this bit together.
Oh, that's so beautiful, Julie. So
And that
beautiful.
sort of stayed with me for forever, you know, that
Yes.
to really help somebody, don't do it for them, do it with them.
And the
Let
idea
them
that
do it.
we really can't save another person, it's all their choice, but we can walk with them in love and let them know they're not alone. That is the ultimate spiritual principle, so beautiful.
Yeah.
So what would you say, Julie, would be a primary way that you changed after you recovered from the injuries and you were out of the hospital and trying to get your life back together? What new direction did you decide to go in? And I know it wasn't immediate, because we know as humans that when we go through a trauma like that, it takes a while to find our way through it. But what advice do you have for people who are trying to find their way through a great painful experience?
Well, I'm a great believer in, the in-breath and the out-breath. So for whatever trauma you've taken in, you need to give the time to have the out-breath to let it breathe, let it sit, let it percolate, let its teachings reveal themselves to you. And the changes will come, you don't have to force anything. That's one of the big things I've learned. I think people are either in our Western culture, we're always pushing into the wind, pushing, got to make it happen, got to make it, this is got to do, or we're laying right back going, no, not me, I don't want to do that. And somehow to be like this and to say, everything will, if I make sweet effort attracts grace.
Oh, I
And
love
grace and sweet effort, when they come together, are so filled with alchemy that anything's possible.
grace
So
and sweet effort. That is beautiful. So the equation that we need to remember is a little grace and a little sweet effort, and we will be brought into the light of understanding. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, we start to, because we have within us this inner spark of the divine. But I say this in all ways, that we have to understand that that light is buried under layers and layers and layers of conditioning, wrong understanding, addictions, sadnesses, and the spark gets a bit buried, but it's always there. And so what I did was I decided, well, this spark had been ignited in such a way, because I sort of hit a wall at 100 miles an hour, and so it exploded, but then it sort of diminished again. And I had to find ways to reignite it without such trauma and without the pain and all of the consequences of that. And so I went, to answer your question. Sorry, I'm rambling a bit probably, but I went on a quest to find people and a place, but to find people who could, on books and teachings that could somehow frame what I was going through and take me back into that inner experience. And I've had such a journey, and I'm going to probably put it into some form of a book or a talk, because I feel, you can never find the teacher. It's said the teacher will always find you when you're ready. So that sweet effort you have to do, self-inquiry, not blaming anymore. Blame is the saddest game in town, because it creates such a negative, heavy energy. And actually then everything that you're yearning and longing for kind of gets pushed away.
Yes.
And then people can't get close to you and can't love you in the way that perhaps they want to love you. So growing up spiritually, I'm sure your guys will know this, but you have to take responsibility for you, for what you've done, what you haven't done, for your failings. Not try to be some guru or but just try to be as true to yourself. And when you fall, pick yourself up, take an out breath, take time, whatever time you need, and then start walking again back towards the light.
You just beautifully described what our lives are here on earth. They're a constant surrendering to a new lesson, maybe getting knocked down by a painful event, and then trying to take a little sweet effort to find our way to that love and light. And you're right, when we get lost in our anger, our blame, our grief, it shuts us down for a while, never permanently. We can always find our way back to the light. But most of the grieving people that I work with, of course they have great anger that their beautiful loved one crossed over. And we honor that because we know that's part of the human experience. And yet, as they seek different answers, different perspectives, they listen to people like you, or they go do a session with people like you, then they start to go, well, maybe there's another way to look at this. And that is the beginning of all the good stuff.
I think when we start to look at another perspective, we allow ourselves to step out of ourselves and be expansive enough to yeah. I love the word, the compass. The compass has all of these points, and we have to walk around this compass. And sadly, in our modern world, we're not really being allowed to do that very much anymore. And go around the compass and encompass all of those perspectives, and then we have compassion,
Yes.
because it's the only way it can arise. You can't force compassion, but when you have literally seen through all those different eyes, and you've seen into their backstories of why they are the way they are. Yeah, anger it's just energy. We're energetic beings, and as you feel angry and you want to go and commit the same crime of probably yourself, what my mum only wanted to do to this woman. I mean, it was just frightening, to see my mum so angry. Oh my god. And and other people as well, and friends, and they were angry with me for being forgiving. And
Yes,
so
right.
it's and it's like whoosh, an awful lot of energy moving around, but it is only energy, and we put these labels on it,
Yeah.
don't we? We put all these labels. I'm sad, I'm tired, I'm this, I'm that. But I just try to think of it in a neutral way and think, whoa, there's a lot of energy moving me. Well, there is today actually with you. There's a lot of energy moving in me today, and it's taking me into a place that I don't really want to think I want to go, and it's
Mhm.
certainly not something I want to inflict on anyone else. So
Yeah.
maybe a
So
walk in
Julie,
the countryside.
you do private sessions, is that correct? Do you want to talk more about that?
I do private sessions occasionally. When what I really like to do is, it's like if a group of people would get together and then they invite me, and I'll come in on a Zoom call and we can have a mystical conversation. And because I like the dynamic of that.
Yeah.
And I will sometimes do one-to-ones, but I think my time there's so many things that I have to do within my day, and to really give time to people and to honor them. I don't quite have enough time for everybody,
Yeah.
but write to me, put in the thing, because I will always get back to you. And if I can't help you, I will point. I'm a good signpost. I'll point you to someone else who I think probably can, or a book, or a place, or something you can listen to, a teaching, or somebody you can follow.
And so they should go to juliechimes.com. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So it's
Yes.
Julie, Chimes, just like the bell, chimes.
Just like the bells. Yeah, that's why I love harmony for sure.
Yes. .com, and they will find out how to reach you and perhaps hear more in this new book you're going to write, Julie. I just want you to get that book out to the world because it's going to help so many people. And then also in numerology, just I wanted to share
Oh
with
yeah,
you.
I was really curious about that.
As you probably know, you're a Virgo 5 path, and 5 is a number of courage, adventure, expansion, also of learning lessons through the physical body and the physical self. Boy, there's never been a better example.
No kidding.
You reached spiritual enlightenment through 30 stab wounds. That's a pretty physical journey of enlightenment.
Yeah, I won't have many followers, that's for sure.
But what we say about that is such a beautiful truth, is that we each pick our own path of enlightenment, and somehow it ends up being perfect and unique for each of us. And there was something in your soul that agreed to experience this incredible journey. And we can even compare it to what many of the mystical religions talk about, the journey of crucifixion in order to attain enlightenment. And people experience that in many different ways, but that crucifixion of the heart crucifixion of the body, however it comes to you, it can be your greatest moment, your greatest blessing of awakening, as you know, as you've told in this story. So is there anything else you want to say to our listeners, Julie?
Well, there's so many things I would like to say, but the most important thing is that the currency of the true world is love. And when you do leave this world, that's what you will take with you. And the more love you have, the higher you will fly. You must never forget that that light is inside you, and it can be awakened no matter who you are. I have met murderers and I have met what I would call saints. And I know that there's hope for everybody. Never write yourself off, never put yourself down. Understand that to come into this human life is such a gift, and it's monumental, that process. And the fact you've chosen to be here now on this earth is really important. And we need more people to, well, we need, hark at me, but it would be wonderful. The more people that are in that truth, that will not get swayed, that will not judge, that will not don't project onto all of these sort of this false world of celebrity, etc., etc., etc. Don't get distracted. Stay within, and you'll intuitively know. The speed of light is incredible. When it starts to awaken in you, everything just becomes intuitively obvious. And it's a very, very exciting and fantastic journey. It's just wonderful. It's worth it. It's worth everything. It's worth even being stabbed for, I have to say. My life has changed for the better in every way possible. So I'm not just saying something from an intellectual point of view. I'm saying it with all my heart and all of my life experience. It's worth it.
Oh, Julie, you're such an angel. I'm so grateful that you shared your story with us today. And for all the listeners, you can go to her website, juliechimes.com, look for her upcoming new book. And also her previous book is still available even on Amazon, Stranger in Paradise. And it tells the whole story of this amazing journey she just described, which is so phenomenal. And I just want
Did
you
it
to know.
make you laugh? Did it make you laugh sometimes?
Yes, I
Because I tried
laughed
to.
and cried all the way through your story. It was so beautiful. But what Julie illustrates is really what humans are struggling with. How do we move through this dense world of forgetfulness and wake up to who we really are? And Julie really shares that in such a beautiful way. Thank you so much, Julie. It has been beyond an honor to have a mystical conversation with you.
Thank you,
So
Sue.
much.
Thank you for the invitation, and much love.
Much love. Thank you.